Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the International People and Culture Week 2024. This is day two. I'm Jonathan. I'm the coordinator at the PCA, and of course, anchoring today's session. Thank you so much for joining us on different parts of the globe. I know you're joining us live on YouTube or on LinkedIn. We've got a fantastic session lined up for you. We're just recovering from yesterday's session, actually, which was brilliant. Where we spoke about PR for HR. If you have not watched that yet, please go back to our LinkedIn channel or our YouTube channel and you can watch the recording of that. But for those of you who are not acquainted with the PCA, it's a membership think tank dedicated to people professionals from across the globe who are transforming workplaces and championing better working. If you want to join us as a member, either as an individual member or as a corporate partner where you can list your organization, please drop in a message at info@peopleprofessionals.org. And I shall send you some more details very soon. You'll also see kickers at the bottom of your screen, which will give you some more details regarding the PCA, regarding IPCW, and everything that's happening over the next 7 days and over the course of the next few weeks. So keep a check on those kickers at the bottom of your screen. It'll give you a lot of information. The International People and Culture Week is now live. They've got 2 sessions today and tomorrow yet to come. And of course, then the International People and Culture Awards on the 7th of May. So look out for that. We're also going to be releasing the International People and Culture Review. We're going to be sharing to the authors and the different topics they've written about, and of course, the publication coming out very soon as well. You, as a viewer, can get involved, of course, and by taking the practitioner's questionnaire. So if you're a people and culture professional, once again, drop in a line at info@peopleprofessionals.org, and I'll send you some more details. Today, it's all about that million-dollar question: is the future of HR, people, and culture? So if you're joining us live, use the comment section on LinkedIn and YouTube. Drop us a line. Tell us what you feel. Do you agree with us? Future of HR is people and culture. And if yes, tell us why. If no, tell us why. We've got a fantastic lineup today. We will be talking to you about the different aspects of this topic. I want to start off by saying hi to Khalid Raza, who's joining us from Jaipur in India. Khalid, of course, is an Associate Vice President of Human Resources. He was at People Strong. He's also spent 15 years as Talent Acquisition Manager and Director at different firms like Altisource, IBM, and EY. Thank you so much for joining us, Khalid. I want to say hi to, of course, Camilla Meets, who is, of course, joining us from Denmark with over 15 years of experience in cultural transformation and organizational development. She's now the Group Chief People Officer at Lehman. Thank you so much for joining us, Camilla.
My pleasure.
I also want to say hi to Angelique Slob, who's just popped out of the screen, but she should be back very soon. She's joining us from Netherlands, of course. She's a founder and management consultant and a future work strategist at the Hello Monday Club. If you're not following that, I suggest you do that as soon as possible. There's some fantastic stuff that Angelique is up to. There she is. She's back with us. She also worked as the Director of HR Innovation and Customer Experience at LiveWork and Amsterdam. Thank you so much for joining us, Angelique.
Thank you.
The last person on the panel, a very important person, of course, is Perry Timms. There's a saying that goes that if you don't know who Perry is, you're probably living under the rock. So go check out Perry Timms if you haven't yet. He's going to be a moderator for today. He's the founder and chief energy officer at People and Transformational HR, and of course the author of Transformational HR and the Energized Workplace. Thank you so much for joining us, Perry.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Before I hand the virtual stage over to Perry, I want to, of course, say hi to David Little, who is the president of the PCA and the CEO of the TCM Group, and of course, an author himself of Transformational Culture and Managing Conflict. David, over to you for some opening remarks before we get started.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Well, welcome to day 2 of International People and Culture Week. Fantastic. We had a great conversation yesterday. You said about the role of PR and support for HR helping to tell their amazing story of the impact they're having in organizations. So I cannot wait to sit back, listen and learn and be inspired by the conversation we're having today about how we can bring people and culture to the forefront and looking at the future of HR. And I can already see some of the points that have been made in the chat function, some really powerful points. So looking forward to being part of it. So thank you for being part of International People and Culture Week. And I think I'm going to hand over now to the amazing and fabulous Perry Timms and the panel, and looking forward to just sitting back and listening and learning.
Thank you, David. Thank you. And thanks, panel, for being part of this conversation. And I just want to say how brilliant it is that we are having a whole week dedicated to people and culture, and we're celebrating all that that is. There is this kind of phrase, isn't there? What is an organization without people? The answer is it's nothing. It's a shallow, hollow vessel of perhaps brand and assets. So when I see corporate reports that say our people are our greatest asset, I'm like, no, they're not your greatest asset. They are your organization. And then culture, that thing that we talk about a lot. And I often equate it to, we try and measure culture. We try and say, what difference does it make? And how do we describe it? And it's like, well, we don't do the same for love, do we? When we love someone, we don't measure it and we don't try and put parameters to it and conditions. So I'd like us to kind of think about the wonderful thing that is people and the fabulous thing that is culture, but also then go to the lens of HR, the human resources practice, profession and field. So I've got a lovely panel here who are going to give us some views, and thanks already for the lovely chat stream that's coming in there. It seems to be quite an emotive subject. There are people who say HR, yes, it means human remains, they say, and it's awful that that comes into play. Now, panel, I'm going to get straight into this and start with our first question, which I think is a bit of a big one, actually. Is the HR function still relevant to organizations? Camilla, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Perry, for that. I would love to answer no to that question. That would be my preference, but I think it depends, and I think it depends on the organization, obviously. So which type of philosophy do you have or want to have? How do you identify your problems or your opportunities? What do you see those being? And what kind of solutions do you see, are the right solutions for that? And I think in that string, it depends very much of if do you want HR or do you want people and culture? For me, it's two very, very different functions. And it's not just about semantic. It is really, really two very different ones. And I see people and culture as an evolution of HR. But again, it requires different mindset, different purpose, different design. So I would say, yeah, we probably still for a while yet will need it, because there are still companies that, focus on different things. Profit probably being the main one, efficiency, productivity being the main ones, also above, well-being and other more human aspects. So that would be my really, really short answer to that.
Lovely start. Some great words there, like philosophies. I really like that. And evolution. I think there's something really important that we keep thinking quite high about this thing, but also, as you said, really practical. Khalid, your organization provides software solutions to the people, culture and HR profession. So your view, is HR still relevant to organizations?
Oh, yes, I completely agree with it. The HR is relevant. In fact, you said HR is, people are not the assets, they're the organization. And if that is the theory, then we need somebody who can take care of the organization. At a certain point in time, if I correlate HR with the organization as something that you're cooking, then HR and people and culture is the passion and the taste and the experience that you bring in. You can bring the ingredients, but you might not get the taste. I think it's that nuance aspect that I would feel that HR is very relevant.
Lovely. Ingredients, but not necessarily the taste and the experience. So there's the sizzle and the smell going on there, as well as the actual act of cooking. Thank you, Khalid. Angelique, your view on that. Is HR still relevant to organizations?
I think it's never been more relevant. HR has never been more relevant. And then we can have the discussion about what HR is and what the roles are and what the tasks and responsibilities are. I think that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. But as I totally agree, an organization is nothing more than a group of people working towards the same goal. And that's always, even when I was still in HR, that's been my guidance principle. We are here together, we work on the same goal. That also takes away the discussion, is HR there for the employee or for the employer? It's the same, the organization is one. And the alignment of that whole is the task of HR, even traditionally. And I really want to build on what Camilla said about the evolution of HR. If you look, of course, to the history, HR used to be a very administrative and legal, just taking care of the legal and administrative task. And that has been evolving into growing more responsibilities and more responsibilities. And in today's complexity and the changing needs of employees and the more complex tasks and responsibilities people have in general, because of technology, because of demographics, HR is becoming more important. Hence, now we see the evolvement from personal management, human resource business partner into people and culture. So it's quite interesting. And for me, the question is more, will HR be a very different department than, will it coexist, or is it an evolution, and will it just grow and become just like a larger part of the organization?
Nice. What a lovely kind of mosaic of viewpoints there. But I think there's some key themes in amongst all of this, which is about the changing times and the nature of what work is to people and how we engender the sense of that collective spirit, Angelique, that you talked about, to an agreed and aspired goal and outcome. Danny's comment's really interesting, where he said HR is more about process, policy, risk management, protection. It's interesting that I've seen phrases like people operations come in quite actively now to underscore the safe, compliant and stabilizing administration. And then you're absolutely right. There are some people with very specialist niche areas of practice that help with things like organization design, talent acquisition, and so on. I don't rally against any of those, because I think they're just trying to represent the nature of the problem to solve, to go back to Camilla's earlier phrase. I think about the legal world, right? And there is a practice field called law, but there are solicitors, advocates, barristers, counsel, paralegals, researchers, you name it. There are so many different denominations. Ultimately, they all practice law. And I guess there's something in people and culture that we are an HR practice field, perhaps, but our output is to amplify the impact of people and culture in amongst all that mechanistic business process. So really like what we've been able to kind of contrive to come together with on that one. But my next point is about the bad press, perhaps, that HR gets. I mean, if you stop somebody in the street and say, tell me about HR, they might say something like, oh, they're the people who fire you. They're the people who spoil the parties. They're the people who write policies that make us feel like children. And that's a reputation that I guess none of us want to have, but perhaps is some of the experiences that people have either directly or indirectly heard about. So do you think it's a very thankless, an ungrateful job? Do you think there's something that we ought to do to sort of elevate the perspective of it? Angelique, can I start with you on that one? Is it thankless and ungrateful?
Oh, it's a good question, because it's been like a very, very persistent narrative also in the HR world. And I've been working with, just before the pandemic, I brought together a group of forward-thinking people leaders, HR leaders, and we worked really also on that topic, like how to strengthen, how to empower each other to drive the strategic discussion. Because I think when I was in HR, I didn't even think that was kind of part of my job. Well, I knew it was part of my job, obviously, because at the same time, like, I can't drive through a red traffic light. It's the same kind of analogy, it's kind of like we have to follow the law, we have to be compliant. Of course, there are some policies, we have contracts, and now that's in order, like that should be in order. But let's talk about fun stuff, how we can grow together, and how can we, offer a great employee experience, and what is the organizational strategy, and how can I help that organization. So I've always been doing a lot of that, apart from like more project-related things. So it's quite interesting that it's such a persistent idea that HR is like, this kind of like police agent telling you not to drive to the red light.
Yeah. Nice. Camilla, do you have a view on that to build on? Is it an ungrateful and perhaps thankless job at times?
Yeah, of course it is. And I think it is also in other functions. I'm thinking of IT colleagues, when everything works, we're happy. When it doesn't, there is no thank you for that we are able to stream today and that everything works. But and I think that I in recent time, just in the last 6 months, I've seen floods in my LinkedIn feed with people who really rally around this idea of, that how hard HR people are feeling and all this stuff. And it's not that I can't relate to that, but I feel that there is also a side where we have to take responsibility of the role and reputation that we have helped create in a system that has been a tough one and still is a tough one. So it's not an either or, but I feel that, we are not just the victims here. We've also been an enabler of the system and the ways of working. And I think the legal part that you mentioned is just one of them. So we have been really good at playing good cop and bad cop in the workplaces. And that is, for ourselves, but also for our colleagues, extremely confusing. And so you never know, and it's not very trustworthy, because I never know if you're going to come and fire me, or, if you're kind of coming up to say, I'm your best friend. So I think that we can't sit around and wait for the organizations to educate itself. I think it's upon ourselves in our industry to move that perception and change that perception. And we have to do something radically different. And I think the whole legal part that you spoke about, for me, I think it's also been maybe a little bit also in the earlier days, it was hard to sometimes feel that the voice of the people and culture, or HR, was listened to. And by saying, well, the law says, or, that was a way to just kind of end the conversation. And I think that has been, I've definitely used that. I'm guilty as charged in that. And I think that over time, in some cultures more than others, I think, if we look to, the US compared to the Scandinavian countries, it's a little bit different. But overall, we've just stepped into this, there was a comment before, legal policing, a lot of red tape policies, anything but setting people up for success and creating joy in the workplace. Really. So I understand. I've been in many companies that I worked in the past. Every time you go to a new country or visit new people, it's never a positive. It's always like, HR is here, and I understand why. I think it's fair.
Yeah. However, I think before I come to Khalid on that, during the pandemic, the reputation changed significantly, didn't it? Because we were then asked to keep people safe, to help them adapt to new ways of working, and introduce furlough that people had never even heard of before. And people were still, I guess, being paid and reliant on us to do that. So it's really interesting. Khalid, you must speak to a lot of people who are helping drive organizational success and implementing technology to help them do that. Do you get the same impression that it does feel like a thankless role and there's a lot of gratitude not shown?
Yes, it is. And as I say, the referees and the coaches never get the best player awards, because that's not what they're supposed to be judged on, right? So one part of HR is compliance, transactions, and that needs to be done. At a certain point in time, when we talk about people and culture, I think the responsibility does not lie with HR. I think the responsibility lies with the organization of the culture. So holding one of the siblings accountable for how the family is run is, I think, a little too much. So I think we should look at a broader view and see, if we are looking at a people and culture problem, it is not one department. They may be custodian of a lot of transactions. They may be a certain aspect influencing it, but can't be completely responsible for it.
Yeah, great point. I can remember agendas that said HR has to talk more of the language of business was a big agenda. And so we kind of moved into that space. But I think we left people behind a little bit when we started to talk very clinically about KPIs and performance and effectiveness, because people went, well, hang on a minute, where's the duty of care to look after me as an individual that has very challenging things go on in my life? And yet, I think, as Danny's put, when we saw people in their life environments with their challenges around health and loved ones and emergency services, we suddenly had to demonstrate an enormous amount of the compassion that we had, but we'd somewhat pushed it to side. So I think there's something really important about how symbolic talking people and culture is compared to talking HR. HR is the underpinning safe regulatory environment. People and culture is where we, to use Emma's phrase, help people experience some joy where they can, and care and support and futures. I think there's something really important that we don't often talk about. HR can help people navigate and architect their futures. I don't think we play that card strongly enough as well. Now, here's a controversial one, right? So the next point I've got, it talks to an HBR article about why we love to hate HR. I mean, that's kind of HR bashing a little bit there. And the quote was, HR should walk away from time wasters. And I think there's something in here about perhaps the more clinical performance related aspects to it. Now, why I want to bring that in is we are standing on the precipice of potentially huge change enabled by things like artificial intelligence, automation, and advancing technologies. I'm going to come to you first on this, Khalid, by the way, just so you know. Do we start to see perhaps a separation of the mechanistic, mechanical, algorithmic, automatable side of what we deliver as value from an HR function, and then create something separate that deals with the magic and the mystery that is people and culture? Khalid, what's your view on that? Are we seeing a potential separation, but they're still trying to achieve the same ends?
There will be, not probably at this point in time on ground, but I think the fundamental of culture will still remain, because there will be people involved. Even with AI coming into picture, the repetitive tasks will go away, but you still have set of people who will manage those repetitive tasks, or the AI or the advent of technology. So the aspect of creating that culture and looking at people either as an asset or as an organization has to continue. And I think that fine line between where your compassion and your technology meets is the right sweet spot. And I think every organization is at a different place, but everybody is trying to reach there.
Yeah, totally agree. Angelique, I'll come to you next, but I'll lead it with the little comment that I often use. We've got to get really good at understanding what human-machine teaming looks like in the future. So does that mean we integrate technology within HR and it still has a people and culture impact? Or do we actually separate out and have an HR that does the machine and people and culture that helps with the teaming? What's your thoughts?
I think it should be, in general, not only for HR or people and culture, but I think, the machines, the AI will be integrated, deeply integrated in all our working processes.
Yeah.
So I've been using more and more of AI just like lately. And, I was in another day, and in a meeting, I said, I think we have more AI bots in this meeting than actual humans. But it's great, like in a sense, I'm more productive, and I'm still learning, of course. I think that will grow, and there are tremendous opportunities for HR to put those time wasters in AI. I think HR is behind, is very much behind on that, and I totally agree with Camilla that HR also has a reputation because of themselves.
Yeah.
The efficiency of processes and process thinking and how to set up the department is usually not very good, and that I have improved a lot when I was an HR interim director in various companies. And as HR can let go of that, they can grow into what they always wanted, to become more strategic. And this time, what we say more strategic, maybe even might be the people and culture a part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is hugely important. Yeah. Also, HR will be between, like people and culture role, I see it in between HR and the business.
Yeah.
And the main thing is to close that gap. Yeah. And to align those things and bring the conversation from the law and from legal and from policies and from KPIs and performance and from numbers to an organization where people can thrive. And like Emma had some great comments here in the chat.
Yeah.
Joy, people thrive, flexibility, and this is where we have to start the conversation.
I agree. Before I come to you, Camilla, there's something in that, isn't there? And Ravi put a good comment in there about how leaders position the function, right? And I think we've also got to remember, and this has been an ongoing thing for decades, ever since I've been in the workforce, management capability when it comes to the people side, right? How many HR professionals do we know who say, all I do is bail out my managers who don't know how to lead and manage people properly, and so they kind of end up compensating for that shortfall. And so is there a danger that as we automate, there is a chance that gets worse? Or is actually this going to be the liberation, perhaps, so that HR and managers can actually start looking after people in the way that we should all have done, knowing that AI and automation is taking some heavy lifting away? Camilla, what's your view on the whole AI automation piece and its impact here?
So I think with all technology, and of course we are probably looking at a big disruptor here. I think it's about getting on it and embracing it, and just learning the skills and figuring out the ins and outs and the pros and the cons. So I think there's no fighting against it. So it's just how do we get the best out of it? But I don't think it's going to be a savior for anything.
No.
It's just another tool that can do good and bad, or So we are back to the system. We are back to the human beings behind everything. And so and for me, I think that it's the big thing we need to look at here from a people perspective, from an organization, from a business, from a leadership perspective, is the human view. Like, how do we see the human beings? And I've saw some comments in here as well. We've come from an age where human has been numbers and things and the cog in the machine. And that's still very much the way we view, and that's still very much the processes and systems of how we work. And so I think it takes tremendous unlearning before we can even start really moving the needle anywhere. But I think it also it's about changing our language. It's about changing our systems and moving that. And I mean, and that's why I hate HR as a word. I mean, we changed it when I joined the company a year and a half, and we pulled the plug on basically everything. Deleted overnight everything, and we started from scratch. And the biggest surprise was no one missed it. It didn't impact anything, which was quite sad and surprising and all sorts of things. But it's about changing the language. I hate the word employee because it really also just, and our language is riddled with words that don't really bring out the human in the. So I think technology is there to help us during the way, but I think the problem and where we need to focus lies elsewhere, and then adapt the technology with it.
Khalid?
I just want to add on this what Camilla said, because we're talking about employee engagement for decades, right? So every year there's a newer way of measuring the same problem. So we're not doing anything to solve it. We're just measuring it differently. But just try to dovetail on what Camilla said, that technology will still exist. We would need to find ways to get people together to move on.
Totally that. Yeah.
Can I add a word? Can I
of course
add
you can.
boss on the list of words that we should be using? The word boss.
Yeah. I don't like that either. Yeah. There's a whole range of that. I wrote a blog post recently, and I used this frame of metaphor called Room 101, which was a program where people ban things to get rid of them. And I wanted to ban things like induction. Like, what the hell is that? And probation. Like, what have we done with the language that we created? Now, I love what Camilla's done there, which is nobody noticed when we deleted past references to a thing that we perhaps had too much of a hang up over whether we should or shouldn't, and you just did it, and it all worked. I think when I talk to people in leading positions who aren't in HR, and I ask them what they're worried about, they often talk about things like talent, skills, togetherness, ingenuity, and they're all the things that I guess don't always appear on a balance sheet, right? And they often come to HR's door to say, skill us up. Like you said, Camilla, unlearn. Let's get more imaginative. And then they go, oh no, but not risky. So we're caught sometimes, aren't we, in a tension between aspirations and where business is trying to get to, and then leaders getting risk averse and kind of pulling us back into the safe spaces. I don't know what the answer is, by the way. I just thought I'd have a rant about the fact that I totally agree with you on some of the language. Lovely, thank you. So I guess what we are sort of really saying there is that we absolutely recognise there will be impacts that HR and automation, AI and automation technology will have both to HR and what work is, but we should be mindful of the fact that it is just another tool. It's how we're kind of recalibrating. I've heard some people talk about less organizations shaped like pyramids and more like diamonds, because the entry level jobs seem to be the ones that would get outsourced. But then I'm still not even sure that's the case. When I see how many people touch customers' lives and want to talk to them, and they are the entry level roles often, they're not senior managers and so on. So anyway, there's definitely something to explore in that much more. Right. So I'm going to go to this whole sense of skills, really. If you're a professional and you're either in HR or people and culture, learning and development, organization design, talent acquisition, whatever it is, if you're in it now or want to get in it now, what are the kind of skills that you think we ought to be recommending that they aspire to assimilate, accumulate, and acquire? Because I'm getting the sense that what we've got now needs an upgrade and a sharpening and a reshaping and so on. So I'm going to start with you again, Camilla, on this, on the skills side of things. What's the sort of hot things that you're thinking, yeah, we need to do more of that, have more of that, and be better in those areas? So what's your wish list on skills for the future?
It's growing and it's getting longer, but let me try and start at the top. So I think first and foremost, critical thinking, like extreme critical thinking, because if you need to disrupt a system and a best practice and change the paradigms, you have to start questioning things that you just took for granted. Like, what are we, what happens if we just press delete on this? Should we be doing, that's the first thing, because I think that links into the unlearning. It is about saying everything I've known, what if that is all wrong? And then starting to, I do that all the time. And I love to surround myself with people who can do it even better than myself as well.
Nice.
So I think that's one of the things. I think there is a thing that HR and people and culture both are missing, and leaders as well. If we really want to shift things, it's also more of a systemic thinking. I mean, we need to have a broader understanding of the ecosystem that we are part of. And I think as a people and culture person, that is a key area, because it's one of the rarest functions where you actually, if you do it well and right, work across so many different systems. So I think there is a lot in there in terms of really applying and figuring out, how do I not only just understand the business, but how do I understand that if we do A, how does that impact something over here? That type of thinking, I think, is extremely critical and missing also in the very siloed organizations that we over time have built.
Agree with that. And I think you hit on something even by talking about silos, because I genuinely think that almost like protective vacuum we've built around functions is no longer serving us very well. So multidisciplinary thinking seems to be really strong. But I love the fact that systems thinking and critical thinking are actually two really nice interweaving, almost flow type of approaches. So that's some sound advice there. Khaled, I'll come to you next, because obviously you're dealing with a lot of clients. They're trying to collate a lot of skills and know how to leverage and use them, perhaps through your technology. What kind of really top level skills are you thinking that we should invest in the near future and longer term?
I think one of the things is the reading data and probably call it analytics, call it whichever way. Even if you have tools like Tableau or anything which can help you generate data, but how do you interpret it? I think that, and second is reading information and taking insights out of it. I think these are going to be very critical, because AI is going to give you a lot, beautiful graphs, everything, but how do you know where the problem is? And second, just to add to what Kamala is saying, I think from HR perspective, from software side, I think they need to start thinking that they're the firefighters, right? And which will from two perspectives. One, that they have to ensure that everybody is safe, and they have to also have the compassion to know that nobody's going to think with safety about them. So they have to keep themselves safe and then ensure that the organization is also safe. So I think that mentality has to be built in, because they're doing the most critical part in the organization. If they fail, then the organization will not survive.
Yeah, Khaled, I could hear evidence-based practitioners cheering, as you said, about the data side and interpreting in it and using it to go, but what is this telling us about a problem and or a potential solution? So I love the not just look at my data, but what is it telling us and urging us and encouraging us to do? I think that's really critical. And then I think Dave Ulrich would probably cheer your second comment, because he often says HR isn't about HR. It's about the business, it's about people, and it's about the communities that those businesses operate in. And I think that's a beautiful way of saying our field of vision now is not just on policies and compliance. It is absolutely about that ecosystem that Camilla talked about. Now, Angelique, I'm going to come to you, because I'm hoping you're going to mention abundance in this answer about future skills. Go for it.
Yeah, so first of all, I agree with everything that Camilla and Khaled said, and I wanted to add personally also to Camilla and other leaders out there, it's not just critical thinking, it's also having the guts to put it through and the skills to influence. So my congratulations, Camilla. And I think it's the broader perspective, looking at demographics and see what's happening in the world around us. using data and not being scared to say things like, well, and not just data as in, the data you get out your systems, but research. So if there's proof that the 4-day work week improves productivity, why is that not on the agenda on the leadership table? Why are we not talking about it? We need to be able. We need people that say, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And then in addition, that's a project that I've been working on, a concept that I've been developing over the last year and a half, the concept of abundance thinking. So we come by default in organizations from scarcity thinking, because the system, as Camilla said, is based on the industrial thinking where resources were scarce. Today we need creativity, innovation, courage, collaboration, and integrate that with technology. And these are all infinite resources. And the outcome that we're looking for is also infinite. So that means that if we move from scarcity to abundance thinking, we create a different kind of organization on a higher level on the organization evolution scale. And we make better decisions and we come to more innovation and cultures of trust and collaboration. And that is where the magic happens.
I love that. I do love that. I won't name the company, but there are several enterprises who are probably staring at bankruptcy now, who had the wrong view on abundance, thinking they were going to have a non-ending cash supply. And anyway, but I think you're right about abundance when it comes to spirit and that ingenuity and that determination. And it's just a reflection on all of those things you've just shared with me. When I've seen companies who are sustainably successful and brilliant in how they do their whole game, not just the output, but the people bit, there's something about how they are just almost relentlessly energized to it. There's commitment, loyalty, devotion, participation. And it's that I think we want to have as our hallmark, don't we? Not that scarcity and that kind of putting people in cages and all that kind of stuff. I do want to reflect on some of the comments, actually, because people have been super participative here. So thank you very much for that. I mean, Katie's comment at the end there, I see founders worshipping data, but it's actually just a breadcrumb to follow. Data doesn't have all the answers and is nuanced. You need to have a human component to drill down and tease out the issue. I mean, I couldn't agree with that more, Katie, actually. And if I'm being critical about the evidence-based HR crew, they can get a bit hot on their spreadsheets and not on the outcomes and the things that's going to get you to do sometimes. It isn't just about collecting, is it? It's about utilization. What I guess I'm thinking now in response to some of these questions is, if you were advising an HR or a people and culture function that really wanted to outperform, that really wanted to push on, we've got some skills that you've given us now. How would they start to create a game plan and a strategy and a kind of series of tactics to kind of shift to the areas that you've been talking about? Khalid, if I start with you, if that's all right, if you were to say to a team, right, double down on this, go heavy on this to start with, and it will lead to success, what would be your starting point advice to those teams?
I think the starting point would be the understanding who your stakeholders are, because your success depends on how and what you're delivering. So identify those and look at probably top 5 things that those stakeholders are looking for. And if you have 5 stakeholders, just marry them around and see which is the common minimum stuff that you have. That's the easiest way of doing it.
Nice.
There are other ways as well where you prioritize things based on what revenue impact do they make for the organization. If in a setup like India, most of us are revenue conscious, and we call HR as cost function, which is very derogatory though. But if that is the priority, you can make a plan accordingly. But at the end of the day, you'll have to ensure that all your stakeholders, and HR especially, has internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders, and the way you deal both of them at the same time is different. I think that's the fine line that we have to balance while we're making the feedback.
That's a lovely answer, Khalid, because I think what you've just described there is actually start with relationships. Start with those people who are closest to you, who have the most acutely defined need that you can deliver to, not just because they're there, but because that's how you can get some traction and bring perhaps some friendly connections to helping you sort of broaden the scope of what you could deliver. Angelique, what would you advise an HR and people and culture team to get going on some form of transformation and shift?
I advise to create a safe space for experimentation, especially if we look what is needed that is often counterintuitive. It goes against everything that we learned about work and productivity. And we can throw a lot of data, but that's not enough. We need to change the mindset and the belief systems. Abundance mindset is part of that, but it's also giving people a way out. So always keep it small and ask a series of questions. So what is needed? why is that difficult, but also in the end, what if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
And then if especially if the leadership team defines, oh, then they will just go back to what it was. So you say, okay, that's okay. So there is a safe way out from the experiment, and making it at that controlled level, you will gain trust, and they start working with you instead of against you.
Really nice. And again, relational trust is what you're talking about there. Participation and almost like a coalition of experimenters. And I think that talks beautifully to what Camilla said about the whole critical thinking thing, asking those questions and interrogating and using that to help your creative flow, so that you don't just have these moonshots, but you can connect them to real tangibles and stuff. I love that. Camilla, you've obviously done this, but if you're advising other HR and people and culture teams about how to get going with some of this, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so I think, and you can start two different places. Where we started was well, first and foremost, just press delete on everything. The only thing we kept was the annual salary review, because that was the only thing I didn't dare to press delete on, and I didn't have a better option for it. So that was actually, and when I said delete on everything, most of it was deleted. The annual surveys, the leadership training.
Nice.
And it's not because it's not important. It's just what we did didn't work. So basically, I think most who work, maybe some people still have it, but the big annual HR wheel, you basically just took it down, say it doesn't exist anymore, it's gone. And so that was one. And then we started from scratch, and we sat together as a team, and we said, what is the purpose? Why are we here? What is the northern light that we need? And we had really great discussions around that. And obviously, when you double tap it, there's much, much more under that. But for us, it was set people up for success. That means, like, every time we do something, it can be like we're sitting there working on a policy. Is this policy setting people up for success? I mean, so it was just kind of, and of course, we drilled that down into way more detail, but it was just really getting on the same page on when we're sitting here and discussing operational stuff. Are we true to why we're here? And at the same time, it was about removing all the clutter. Like all of this doesn't even benefit why we're here. We don't move the needle. And I am completely obsessed with moving the needle for the business.
Right.
So the next step was to identify what's the business problems, challenges, opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's different from each business, So you go out and you figure out where are the pain points. And you can only do that by talking to a lot of people. And keep doing that, obviously. It's not a one-off. No. And then you have to prioritize in all of this and really listen hard on what are we hearing the issues are. And then from that, we're starting, designing or planning what should we be using our time on that solve these problems. And I agree with Angelique completely. It's about creating trial and error and safe spaces that you can do that in. And because there's going to be, especially when you hit delete, and everything that I have been taught as well, you basically just say out the window. The playbook is dead. You're basically left with a book of blank pages, which is both terrifying but also super interesting. But you're no longer an expert in a lot of things because you can't just pull down all practices anymore, or you don't do that. So that would be I think just again, don't sit from an HR perspective, building typical HR, understand the business. And I think this is back to the skill sets, just to link back to that. I think one of the most important skill sets, and one of the things we're training the team in here, is facilitation, because our role is much more about coming and facilitating those than it is sitting in behind our desk and doing policies and procedures and processes and everything. But it's a different role that we have in some of that work we need to do.
I love all that. And if you've read the Deloitte Human Capital Trends Research 2024, they will also be cheering, because I think what you've just done is articulate some of the threads they created within that. They talked about boundaryless HR. And I think that's what I've heard in all of your answers, which is we go where people are, problems are, where systems are failing. And we actually go and have a look at ourselves and go, we don't just need to pivot. We need to kind of start again, reboot our operating system and completely upgrade the nature of what we're participating in. Gary Hamel, London Business School #1 ranked world thinker, says we're suffering from bureaucratic bloat. And I think that's probably where HR is. So we're probably working really hard tending a dysfunctional machine, both the organization and some of our practices. We ought to just stop that, purge it, and then start almost like as an enterprise again. And I love what are we here to do? Not just what have we historically been here to do, but what are we here to do now and next? That's a super compelling agenda there. So there's your tips, folks. I mean, that's a great game plan to start with. I've just got a couple of wrap-up questions, and I really want to get under the skin of what excites you about this profession of ours. So, Angelique, I'm going to come to you first. What excites you about the people and culture function, role, and impact?
I think it excites me because if we start using those wordings, that become closer to the CEO and the C-suite, because they would feel more responsible. And it is the actual way you can reach out and grab their hands and start working together and actually make a real change. And I think we do have the opportunity, we've been saying that since before pandemic, during pandemic, and keep on saying it, we have the opportunity, especially us, our generation of people leader, to really create a different world of work for the generations coming after us.
Agreed. That cannot be anything other than exciting, because it feels like a real line in the sand, totally different paradigm shift. I love that, Angelique. Khalid, let's go to you next on what excites you most about the future of the people and culture profession.
I think what excites me most is the surety that people and culture will remain. Without it, nobody will survive. So I think that part of surety kind of makes me very happy. But at the same time, I think everybody needs to start thinking about the teams together rather than just one function. I think that's what I would look forward to.
Love that. I think, again, it talks to that boundaryless thing, but I think it is almost like people, talent, results, impact. They don't exist in operations only or in procurement only. There's a value chain that goes across all manner of different functions. And if I'm wanting to see some change, it's that we silo less and we just huddle more about the things we want to do that are really powerful. So I'm with you on that, Khalid, totally. Camilla, I'll give you the last word on this one then. What excites you about the people and culture function in the future?
Oh, so much. But I think the very, very short answer would probably be that all the amazing opportunities that currently lies ahead in terms of making real impact for real human beings. And I think for that is that we have the opportunity as a function to tackle real problems, burnout, stress, disengagement, inequality. There's so much that are actually the system of companies are, creating part of the problem. And we can now, redesign our workspaces. I think there's so much in that, and just the fact that we can explore new things with each other, I think that in itself is just super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in work and you hear the answers that you three have just given, you're like, well, when can I start? It kind of feels like you would want to accelerate your journey into being part of the sort of world of work. But I think you're all absolutely right. There's something more important than just business and profit going on here. There is our lives, the communities we live in, the society, and let's face it, things like politics and education and economics, they're broken and they need a significant amount of repair. And I wonder what you're illustrating there is how business has a really fundamental role in helping catalyze some of those changes about how we view wealth, knowing, health, and the planet itself. So I'm really encouraged by all of that. So we've done really well for time. I don't know if Jonathan and David want to pop back into the conversation, but we've had some super feedback from people. So thank you very much for all those threads. It's almost like we'd want to capture those threads and almost put them in a little bit of a white paper. I think Jonathan described the People and Culture Association as a bit of a think tank. And what I think we've had today is a think tank and a very expressive version of what we're thinking here about the potential for the future of the people and culture profession. So any closing words from any of our panel? Khalid, I'll start with you. Anything you want to leave people with as a kind of closing message?
I think one of the most important things that I always tell everybody is you can always impact your own vicinity. So believe in yourself, go out there, believe in this thought that culture is important, people are important, and one bit at a time. I think that's what organizations make happy organizations.
Nice. We're now doing micro TEDx's, by the way. That was one. So thank you, Khalid. Camilla, what's your kind of closing thought for people?
I would love to see more people and culture leaders in the space fighting for better workplaces. We need more activists, and also to Angelique, your point, like people who dare, who are bold, who wants to stand and be vocal and take all the good and the bad that comes with. I think we need as many as we can if we really want to move things.
Nice. Feel the movement there, Angelique.
Yeah, that was actually my same message. I call
Yeah.
that for a few years already. I call that future of work leaders, and there are people that are stepping up to drive the discussion and drive change. We need to set them up for success, so that's why I'm happy to do it. And also say it's not just people in the formal people in culture or HR roles. I say everybody could be a future of work leader, everybody in the organization, but also the son, your son that is sitting on the dinner table and saying something about what he wants, or the girl next door. And we do have to shape this new world of work together.
Beautiful. So there's the call to action, really. Back yourself one step at a time. Let's be activists and really stand for something. And we've all got a part to play in leading this. So I think that's exactly where it is. So absolutely lovely contributions. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming back on, Jonathan and David. I just wanted to give you a bit of time because obviously it's your gig, and some reflections perhaps on what you've heard today and help us kind of wrap up. So David, perhaps start with you.
Amazing, thank you. But I just sat back and I've learned, and what a joy, absolute joy. I've been absolutely inspired and thrilled to hear the conversation. I've taken so much away from it as well, and I think this is why I love the People and Culture Association. We create these spaces for these conversations to learn and listen and to dive into some of these topics. And when I started thinking about people and culture, when I was writing transformational culture, I started to set out what I saw as being 4 really important features of a people and culture function and the emergence of it. And of course, people, creating people-centered and people-centric processes. And some of that's about having the courage to remove some of those rigid, bureaucratic, complex, dare I say it, pernicious and corrosive systems and processes that we've grown up with, and putting people before policy in such a powerful way. And I love some of the thoughts, and Khalid, you talked about understanding your stakeholders, understanding your people. We talked about curiosity, we talked about engagement. I love that, putting people at the center and helping them to define the nature of the function. I talked about culture, co-designing and co-creating a positive workplace culture with others. And that's come across building allyship, collaboration, engagement. That's come through so powerfully. HR cannot and should not do this on their own. In fact, it is an impossibility. Bring in leaders with them, bring in unions, and building a new social contract in our workplaces. Goodness me, don't we need that just now? Yeah. And helping to have those positive, powerful challenge relationships in our workplaces. So the focus on developing that positive, or as I call it, a transformational culture. I also set out work around strategy. And I think what you've inspired me as well, and I kind of this conversation is so clear, is this position in people and culture, or HR, as to me singly the most important strategic function in our organization. And no longer HR striving, and dare I say it, occasionally selling its soul for a seat at the table, to be at the top table. HR is the table. And you've talked about data, you've talked about evidence, you've talked about engagement, you've talked about knowledge, creativity, abundance thinking. That becomes the strategic function of the organization that everyone's dipping into and pulling from and being part of. I love that. It was powerful. The other part that we haven't talked on so much, and it was one of the pillars that I'm always very interested in the P&C function, is justice. And that's one of the conversations, again, maybe it's a conversation for now or for another dialogue, is about the notion of the P&C function as an administration of justice department. But don't worry, I'm not thinking about blame and punishment and tutting and wagging fingers and all that kind of retributive justice that we've so familiar and baked into processes. I'm talking about a transformative model of justice, alignment, collaboration, deep insight, learning and knowledge. And it feels that once HR reduces its vice-like grip on these retributive and adversarial systems and embraces a new justice paradigm, restorative in nature, but powerful and legally compliant, so too does it help to foster a powerful culture within our organizations where justice and fairness, inclusion, understanding, togetherness and belonging, which are such powerful drivers of culture, become a feature of our justice system. So there's sort of four elements, but I think you covered those beautifully, and I love those points. And I think to the point you're asking, Perry, at the end is excited. I go into employee relations departments, and I know many of you do, and it's heads down, case management. The wheels are turning, barely able to think straight, barely able to get up from the transactional. this is exciting. Heads are up, conversations are happening, the ears are twitching, we're listening and learning and gaining valuable insights. And that, to me, is the future of HR. So to answer the question, I think that was posed somewhat rhetorically for the title, is the future of HR, people and culture. I know where I sit. Yeah, very firmly, yes. But I've loved that conversation, and thank you for sharing those insights and wisdom and knowledge and setting a lot of thinking going on. I could see it. I was following the chat function, but beautifully done. Well done. Thank you.
A chat function in itself is a rich mine of information. I did want to pick up Danny's couple of points. The one where he says, I'd love the natural succession for CEO to be from CPO HRD because of the whole sense that it used to be CFOs or CTOs. There's something in there about people orientation in business. I think that's going to be a rite of passage potentially, Danny. So I'm liking what I'm hearing there. And his last comment's lovely. If a person breaches a rule, it's a people problem. If lots of people breach a rule, it's a rule problem. I kind of like that parameter. Going back to your fairness there, David. That's really nice, Danny. So thanks for that. But yes, everybody's been fantastically participative on this. So thank you very much for that. But what a panel. I mean, I do a lot of these panels, and I'm honestly not just saying this, but that was full of gold and absolute richness. So thank you, Camilla, Khalid, Angelique. Thank you, David, for closing this off. Jonathan, I guess I'll head back to you. Are you happy with that?
Absolutely. I'm gobsmacked. I'm actually exhausted. Just taking it all in. I need a few days to sink into this. But yeah, I was trying to summarize this in the sense that we did a survey last year on people and culture, and we asked around 190 people about what they felt about this transition from HR to P&C. And there was confusion in terms of what the future looked like. And there was confusion in terms of if they had to make that transition from HR to people and culture, how do they do that? I see that changing over the last 6-7 months, and having organized this International People and Culture Week, listening into y'all, some of those insights coming in. I mean, today's session is all about finding clarity. Yeah, the future is surely there. We have been talked about the future today, and we also talked about with a lot of clarity in terms of how that can be done. And if I were to summarize everything that you'll have said for the last 55 minutes, it would be to listen in, to be brave, to take those risks when required, to don't take it for granted. Don't take this transition for granted, because you need to upskill. You need to make sure you have the right knowledge and the right skills to get in there. And of course, and finally, to seek the right assistance. If you are struggling in this phase of transition, you make sure you get that right assistance. So I think that's fantastic. So thank you so much, Perry, of course, for moderating this, and Camila and Khalid and Rika. So this does not end today. Of course, everyone who joined us live from different parts of the globe and is watching, I know there are 155 people who joined us live today, but I'm sure this is going to go on for the next few weeks. But you can continue to be part of this. First of all, if you can just repost today's session with your networks, there'll be more people watching it. And the tribe will grow. Practitioners questionnaire, where you can share with us some more details about your successes, your challenges, your inspirations, and how you actually made that transition from HR to people and culture. So this is not just about from the 1st of May to the 7th of May, but we want to keep this going for the rest of the year and for the months to come. So really excited about that. Tomorrow they're going to be speaking about transforming work. We're going to be talking about topics, trailblazers, and trends that are actually affecting the people and culture space. A fantastic panel out there. And of course, next Tuesday, we are going to be announcing the International People and Culture Awards. So hope to see you tomorrow. Hope to see you next Tuesday. And of course, if you have not watched yesterday's session on PR for HR, that's another killer session that you should be watching. But thank you so much once again, David, Angelique, Perry, Camila, and Khalid. And for all of you for joining us from different parts of the globe, this of course is the International People and Culture Week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
And Jonathan, just to say thank you to you as well. These things, as we all know, do not happen by accident and happen chance. There's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes, Jonathan. You've done a fantastic job, as always. I think you just make us all look great when we come onto these things. So well done, Jonathan. Thank you so much to you as well. Well done.
Thanks,
that was a fabulous conversation.
Enjoy the rest. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much.